Hello, welcome to the latest edition of the MABE podcast. I am your host, Andrew Rogers. I am the president of MABE, and I'm happy to be here with you. And I'm also very excited because today is the first time we're having somebody who is actually from Michigan, because this is the Michigan chapter of the Association for Bilingual Education. It is not the national, so it's a welcome balance. Let's just say that. And I'm so pleased to have that first person that we're talking with from Michigan be my good friend, Lynn Jimenez. How are you doing today, Lynn?
Oh, fantastic.
Great. Well, we're so happy to have you here. So I've known you for the last 3 years here in Lincoln Park. We're both ELL coaches. What else did you want to let listeners know before we get started about your background?
My background has been in elementary teaching. I have been a first and second grade teacher for many years. And for 3 years, I was a literacy coach in Lincoln Park. And for the past 5.5 years, I have been an ELL coach, which I do small group intervention with ELL students in my district.
Great. So I chose this topic because I know you're very passionate about the strategy called the language experience approach. So that's going to be our topic today. Can you tell us what it is and how you learned about it?
Oh, I would love to. The language experience approach was something that I learned about from Dr. Carol Salva. In her book, Boosting Achievement, I learned about the language experience approach because it's a great strategy for ELL children. And I work with children from kindergarten to 5th grade in this role that I have. It's the language experience approach is great for getting children to speak, read, and write in English. I learned about it through the teachings of Dr. Salva, and I started using it. I was working with my students, particularly my group of 5th grade boys. I had 3 5th grade boys from Venezuela and Colombia, and I was having a hard time getting them motivated to read and write and speak. And then one day, the alarm actually went off by mistake in our building. And the boys just wanted to talk about what was happening. And they were very afraid. They thought maybe it was a tsunami or something else. And I said, oh, no, it's just a different kind of alarm. It was a fire alarm that went off by mistake. I said, so they really wanted to talk about what happened. And so I started writing down their thoughts, words, and phrases. This was very early in the school year, back in September. And after we wrote those words and phrases, we put them into a sentence together, and we came up with a story about the day the alarm went off.
Great. It's funny. I mean, I'm sure when you said the alarm went off, I thought you meant like, in your head, like you said,
Today.
oh, this would be a great strategy. But no, literally the alarm went off. But then another alarm went off. A figurative one.
Yes, it went off. And, of course we went outside, but when we came back in, they were like, what was that? Because they were newcomers to our district and they didn't know what that was. And so it was a great experience for us to learn about what it meant to be in a school here in the United States, and then a great way of learning about literacy. And then when I was writing, I wrote alarm, and they're like, alarm, alarma. And I said, so when you use the language experience approach, cognates will come up as you're learning with your students. So it's just a fabulous approach.
Yeah. So I'm going to read, this is from the ELL Teachers Toolkit by Larry Ferlazzo and Katie Hall Sipnieski. Says the language experience approach, LEA, describes the process of the entire class doing an activity and then discussing and writing about it in a teacher-led process. The completed sentences can then be used in multiple follow-up activities to reinforce language learning.
Oh, yes. So in addition to that day when the alarm went off, another group of my students went on a field trip to the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum. You can see that story behind my head there. And we wrote down words and phrases from their trip. And after we wrote this large story together behind me, I was able to follow up that lesson by making a little book with this story. So that way they could take the book, back to their classroom to read to themselves. They could take the story home to read with their parents. And something they love when we create these materials is I always put down that they are the authors. I write the word by and include their names. And it's just very motivating for them.
Great, great. So you've been using it in social contexts mostly?
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Andrew, because social contexts are not the only place that you can use the language experience approach. My fifth graders were very interested in the ocean, and we read 3 or 4 books about the ocean. And after 3 days of reading and writing about the ocean, we did a language experience story about the ocean. And we wrote down phrases and words, our shared experience, because that's step 1 with the language experience approach. You want to have a shared experience. It could be the alarm going off, a field trip, or it could be that you read a really great nonfiction book. So after that shared experience, you talk about it, writing words and phrases that were important to the children. And then, because it's very important to use their words. And then you create that story together for them.
Great. Yeah, it has in the EL teacher's toolbox. It says step 1, the class does a teacher planned activity, such as one of the following, and they have a whole list of things, but also you could watch a video clip. You could do something as simple as taking a walk around the school, creating something. It says here also going on a field trip like you did, doing a simple science experiment, those kinds of things. So you mentioned though, the 5th graders and the alarm. So they're ELLs. Were they newcomers or how were their proficiency levels?
Their proficiency levels were like 1.1. They were very, very early in their career to literacy in English. And as we've been doing all these approaches, we've had a number of events and stories that we've created together. And as we've been creating these stories, I keep track with each child's name of the words and phrases that they're saying. And at first, they were only saying one word items, but then as we continued this approach throughout the rest of the school year, I was able to record them saying phrases, sentences, longer items. So it
works well. It gives them greater access to materials. And if, they're not yet writing in English or sometimes too in their first language, it's a good way to bridge that gap, because getting students to start writing when they're not yet writing, especially if they're older, there's only so many ways to do that, and it can be a real challenge. But you want them to be involved in the class, you want to hear their ideas, you want to engage them, and all of those things.
Oh yes, it's very important. It's very important for them to be interested. And something that I want to share that we did is, as I was writing on these large charts, the stories, the children were also writing in their notebooks. And if there was a word that was new to them that they wanted to learn, they would add a picture. So when the alarm went off, they drew the little red box that was beeping during the event. If we were writing about those ocean animals, they would draw a shark or a jellyfish to illustrate their writing. And it helped them to be engaged and part of the process of writing. They really enjoy the writing process now.
Yeah, and also, especially even if you get to older kids, I mean, like if you have high school newcomers, they need to be engaged in their grade level academic content. And when they don't have the writing skills yet and their English is limited, again, like you have to pull with the strategies that are available that can accommodate that. And there's not a large number of them. So I think it's very important for teachers to be aware that this is an option.
Oh, most definitely. And sometimes in the nonfiction books that we're reading, there are diagrams, and those make a great shared experience for the first part of the language experience approach.
Yeah. And, this is a great strategy too, because it incorporates reading, speaking, listening, and writing. So it's all 4 domains. They're all intertwined. You're using them consistently throughout.
Yes, and as we're creating the story, of course, there were words that they did not know how to read or write. So then I'm a reading recovery trained teacher, as well as being an elementary school teacher. And with reading recovery, it's important to say words slowly, to clap multisyllabic words, to help the children hear those parts and then be able to read and write those parts. So as we were talking about, the alarm was buzzing, buzzing, and writing those things. If there was a word like electric or something like that, higher content level words, this is a great way to write these words together. And they see that many words are very similar in English and Spanish. If Spanish is not the language that your children, if that's not their L1, you might have to try other things.
Yeah. And also putting this into a broader context, I mean, it's a very SciF friendly strategy as well. I mean, there's a strong level of interaction. It's definitely a high level strategy. You're applying knowledge.
We would, as we would come back, let's say we came back the next day, the reason why these stories are on the wall is that children would go back and refer to these stories. We would, and also what I love about the language experience approach is that you can have children at a higher level of literacy and maybe children who are earlier on their journey. They can look through this story and find high frequency words. Those are the words that are going to help them to start reading. So, oh, let's find we in the story. Let's find they. A child said the TV was really big at the museum. And I said, well, what's another word besides big that we could use? And he said massive. So we were able.
Yes, you can use it to substitute and enhance sentences as well.
Yes, yes, yes. Very important.
And also yeah, go ahead.
And the reading over and over of this text when they're lining up to go somewhere, these stories are in the hallway, they can read these stories over and over again.
Yeah, and I just want to add with SciF too, I mean, the comprehensible input piece is probably the most important one, because again, it's hard to sometimes get strategies for students who are of a certain age who don't have the English proficiency and or the writing skills.
Yes.
I wanted to read this. I highlighted this from Carol Salva's book, and to be fair, she's been coming to our district a bit, so we have face-to-face interaction with her. I actually think I might need to start a spin-off podcast, which is just, for the Salvies, the Salva fans. So she's got so many of us out there who just, love everything that she does. But she says in her book, the key for a successful language experience approach is to use students' own vocabulary, language patterns, and shared experiences to create text for reading to make the reading process meaningful and enjoyable.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I love Dr. Salva's example that when she taught high school, one of the things that children were really excited about was the prom and how that, and you might think, oh, writing about the prom, that's not going to help students. Well, if you talk about what you do first, next, then last, or I wanted to wear a pink dress. However, my friend lent me a purple dress. All these different transitional words that are so important to children's learning, they will learn with this approach. And speaking about other people who use something similar to the language experience approach, other than Dr. Salva, is that in reading recovery, Mari Clay, in her book, Literacy Lessons Designed for Individuals, she talks about that a crucial part of the reading recovery lesson is that the teacher has a conversation with the child about their interests, what they are excited about that day, and to use those interests to co-construct text with the child. Let the children do as much as they can. So when we were writing those stories with my students, I tried to make sure that they were adding the letters and sounds and words that they knew, and that we kept expanding on that knowledge. And that's why they've just grown in their literacy here with this language experience approach.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Lynn. One more thing, which I told you to hold off on the beginning, but I'd like to hear you talk about. we're done school next week. This will probably air about a little bit later, but it's not a normal year for you. How is this year, this last day of school, different than last days of school in years past?
Well, when I told you that I had taught for many years in kindergarten, first and second grade, I actually taught in a classroom, kindergarten, first and second graders for 31 years. And I was a literacy coach for 3 years and an ELL coach for 5 years. So after 39 years in education, Andrew, it's time for me to retire. And um, even though I'm retiring, I still consider myself a lifelong learner and a lifelong promoter of literacy for young children and older children. And I also wanted to say that I had a bachelor and a master's early on in my teaching career, but then 20 years later, we started receiving a flood of multicultural students from other backgrounds. And I went back to school to get my ELL certification. So you're never too old to learn. And there are great things out there to help our ELL students. And so even though I'm retiring, I still want to keep learning and helping others gain literacy.
Thank you so much, Lynn. That just, that's heartwarming. That is warming of the heart. Again, congratulations on your wonderful career of teaching, and thank you for joining us, even though I won't say 1 foot out the door because you have a good 4.5 school days left to go, but I think you know what I mean. But again, you're still very open, like, to talk about what you know and to help others. So that door is not closed and that door is not closing, I suspect.
Oh no, I'm hoping I can still work. But thank you so very much for having me today, Andrew. And to all you ELL multilingual people out there, keep going and take care.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Good night.